what are our options? Like, what are the options for somebody like myself who's 50 years old? I'm going through menopause. I'm actually losing bone structure. I'm obviously back on the hormones and things are regulating, but is there hope? Are there things I can do? And what do those options look like?
Yes, I'm asked all the time, I'm 50, is this, am I a candidate for this sort of thing? And yes, doctors who are doing face orthodontics are treating people in their 50s and I think 60s as well. I'm sure they would do even older, but people just aren't aware of what's available to them. The bones can always be remodeled. They can always be guided into better positions. And so in America, you're very fortunate. There's probably a greater number of providers in the US than anywhere else in the world. There's certainly in Europe and Asia, the Middle East, and Australia. I'm not aware of any in Africa or South Africa, but this, I believe, is the future of healthcare, because we've just looked at health from the neck down, and we're in an obesity crisis and anxiety and depression and sleep disorders. And when we turn our attention to the fact that airway is a huge issue for so many in the population, there's scientific estimates that 50% of Americans are mouth breathing. That's
Wow.
crazy. That means 50% of Americans have a dysregulated nervous system. They aren't getting quality sleep. They're not in that deep REM sleep for long periods, which is where we do our detoxification and memory consolidation and healing and growth. So if you're not entering into that every single night, then you are fatigued, you're experiencing depression, and your cell death is rapid. Your lifespan is shortening. That's the sad fact here. If you have severe obstructive sleep apnea, the science says it can wipe off a decade to your lifespan.
It's
This is serious.
phenomenal. Yeah, it really is. They were just starting to appreciate sleep apnea when I was in school. And back then, it was just really linked to cardiovascular health. So if you had sleep
Mhm.
apnea, your risk for cardiovascular disease was significantly increased. But you're so right. And then I was just thinking as you were talking, forget just the sleep apnea, there's apnea happening all day. I mean, based on what you're
Yeah.
saying, folks are not getting oxygenated properly during the day, even because they're mouth breathing. So there's just this incredible link direct to not only cardiovascular disease, but obesity, metabolic dysfunction. I mean, the list goes on and on. And then we had how many years of people wearing masks and becoming
Yeah.
hypoxic, just it's just people did not realize during those years when I was in Oregon, which was particularly crazy with the masks. And I was like, you guys are literally doing so much damage to yourself by rebreathing all day. And they're still wearing them.
Yes.
They're still wearing these N95 masks. It's bonkers to me. I'm like, what does low grade hypoxia do to a brain for that many years? But after listening to you and I've done more research on breathing as well, just outside of it, it's like people are walking around mouth breathing in this sort of pseudo hypoxic state all day. Then they go to bed and they're snoring and they have sleep apnea. I mean, it's just the repercussions are really devastating.
Yes, absolutely. And we see so many rates now of Alzheimer's. That's climbing all the time. So people are hitting that earlier and earlier in life. And that makes sense. If you're hypoxic all the time, and in a stress response all the time, what happens to your brain? The oxygenated blood flow goes away from the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, which is doing your higher order thinking and your memory consolidation. It's going to the amygdala to do your instinctual behaviors because you're going to need to fight or flee. So concentration is turned down. So is your memory consolidation. And the cells that expect a degree of oxygen to always be there, it's not there. It's in their more mammalian brain. And so they're getting cell death in their higher order thinking centers, and they're having this cognitive decline. Even in children who are mouth breathing, we're seeing cognitive delay. So they're struggling to concentrate, learn at school. We call it attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which we still don't have a clear idea on what causes it. It's just a term, it's a symptomology, attention deficit and hyperactivity. Well, when children have a dysregulated nervous system because they're hypoxic and they don't sleep well due to mouth breathing, their concentration is not clear. They are disruptive. They are, a tired child will rev up. They're not like adults. They don't fatigue and slow down. They rev up. And so
Mhm.
we call it ADHD. Well, this is highly linked to having a sleep disorder, is an ADHD diagnosis. And so children, they're struggling to learn, their brain is not receiving the right oxygen that it should, because we've disrupted the food, the way we prepare it, we've disrupted their ability to grow a healthy airway. And that's a sad fact. And I'll just go into the part about obesity. When the body is always in stress, because it's in oxidative stress, blood flow goes to our muscle groups in the extremities, as you would know, the limbs, and away from our digestive system. If you're in fight and flight, you've turned down your immune system and your digestion because they're not a priority. And so the oxygen that should be there helping you convert your incoming food into glucose and ATP and usable energy isn't happening because all your oxygen went to your extremities. And so we don't take in nutrition and we don't convert it to energy properly if we're in oxidative stress and fight and flight. And so that food coming in is being stored as weight. And people are putting weight on. And it's to do with this small airway. It's really an uphill battle. I know when I repaired my top jaw in my late 20s, I then had my children. I don't have to hit the gym all the time anymore. I just don't put weight on like I used to when I had smaller airways. And this is anecdotal, but it makes sense backed up by science. If you are receiving adequate oxygen intake and you are parasympathetic dominant, which means most of the time you're in rest and digest, then your nutrient absorption is great. Oxygen is converting food to energy and you're not storing weight because you're in a stress response. So this is how airway is linking up with all of these crazy rates of symptomology and diseases, chronic illnesses that plague modern societies right now.
Wow. Wow.